Season 2, Episode 20, and in fact, the 40th episode ever of the Cup of Mets podcast here. I'm Ian Bosniak, joined alongside by Robert Venegas, as always. Robbie, how was that 50 Cent concert last week, buddy?
Oh, it was amazing, Boz. I mean, again, 50 Cent, one of my all-time favorite rappers, artists in general. Great time at the Barclays Center, and honestly, I wish I could go back.
Wish you could go back to the Barclays Center. Yes, sir. It's a nice place, even to watch those Nets. I know you're a Knicks fan, but whatever. We're just gonna hop right into it. It's been, obviously some shitty times in Metland, and we all do know this. With that being said, remember to give us a follow on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on TikTok. We are at Cup of Mets. In addition, be sure to rate and subscribe to our podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. So this week in the news, Sal Licata was a dick. He claims that, Pete Alonso is one of those toxic individuals within the clubhouse. The clubhouse is a big topic of conversation. There was also a report this week of Justin Verlander and Scherzer, which we'll get into. But in quotes from Sal Licata, who is nowhere near the locker room and who just is an asshole in general and shouldn't be on any sort of sports radio. Him and Brandon Tierney, they're two little buddies. End quote. Alonso is the guy who has to go. If you're looking to change the look of this team, culture is not something that can be bought. He believes that the problems in New York stem from the clubhouse issues. Says that, Alonso may have been a little disgruntled about not being locked up already, which is something that Todd Zeile mentioned a few weeks ago. But what do you make of Sal Licata, giving his 2 cents in here? Obviously, try to pay little mind to Sal Licata. I don't even want to, I wish we didn't even bring him up here, but it is the topic of conversation now that the Mets are irrelevant here on August the 14th. So.
No, very surprising. I mean, again, when you look at Pete Alonso, it's like a, perfect figure for the Mets. A lot of talks in the beginning of his career, putting that C on his jersey. Now this report comes out via Sal Licata. And my question is just, I'd really like to know how he knows this. Obviously, he said he has a source in the clubhouse, but, again, I just feel like he's such like a negative Nancy Met fan in terms of one day he loves us, another day he's talking shit, stirring shit. He also mentioned that the Mets need to address the quote unquote core of the team, and also named names like in the likes of Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil. We need to make a decision on them now. And I mean, the Mets, over my course of being a Met fan, and just knowing the history, the Mets are kind of known for this, trading big time superstars. I understand Pete Alonso might be a little disgruntled in terms of not getting an extension, but things happen for a reason. I think next year's a perfect time to try to give him that extension. But at the end of the day, the Mets were known for trading big time superstars, big name superstars. I mean, a few that come up to mind: Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan. They let Strawberry walk. They let Jose Reyes walk. I think if Alonso is no longer a New York Met, it just adds another name to that letting like a superstar walk kind of deal. But I'm just not happy right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, he's on pace to shatter every offensive record in the books outside of stolen bases, right? I think he's 4th or 5th in terms of home runs, right behind Dave Kingman. And currently he surpassed, the other night he hit his 35th home run, which put him in his own little club in Mets offensive history. He has now 4 35-plus home run seasons. That gives him 4, surpassing Mike Piazza, Dave Kingman, Darryl Strawberry, and Howard Johnson, who had 3. I could see how one may be disgruntled in the contract. We agreed with Todd on that. I think the Mets should have locked Pete Alonso up a few years ago, and I think, Rob, you agree there. To me, saying that he's a toxic presence on air is a very, it makes you not want to play in New York, right? And Pete Alonso is somebody that's embraced New York. Every step of it, through the failures and through the ups. And to me, I don't see him as that toxic presence whatsoever, as you said. And listen, I don't think there's any validity to this aside from the fact that potentially he could be disgruntled about the contract. But saying that he's a toxic presence, within the locker room, I think is there's no validity to that. And in fact, the Mets should just lock him up long term. I know that I've changed my stance on that a little bit. But I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even see the quote there on Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor.
Again, yeah, he just kind of went in on the state of the Mets and he called out the core of the team, quote unquote. And he mentioned, like I said, names like Lindor and Jeff McNeil, saying that the Mets have to make a decision on all three of those guys. Again, the fact that Pete Alonso missed a chunk of time in 2023 and he still leads the team in home runs and has 87 RBIs and he's kind of hit a hot streak, just, going back to what Pete Alonso does. It just kind of, again, and you can get a lot for Pete Alonso right now, but at the end of the day, this is a guy you want to kind of build around and make him like the cornerstone of your franchise. And, again, stuff like this, we don't need this right now, especially with the way the last couple of weeks and month have been going. I just think, again, I need more validity, like you said, but just very disappointing to hear this from Sal Licata.
Yeah, Sal Licata is turning into Frank Fleming 2.0. I think that's what's going on here. He just has. I mean, they both have big platforms, but I think Sal Licata is really trying to make a name for himself with all that, mumbo jumbo and all the switch ups over there at WFAN. So, he can take a hike, to be honest with you. I'm not like concerned about Alonso. I brought it up in the last episode. We know that Billy Epler and Pete Alonso are going to sit down and talk about, a contract extension. I think that that's the way to go. I think that they need to do it now, right? I don't think that they should even let it get to the offseason. I know that players like to not negotiate in season, but normally they're not negotiating in season because they're focusing on winning a World Series. And the Mets are a half game out of the last place in the National League East. So I think now is the time to negotiate, especially considering, as you said, he's getting hot and he's been hitting around the 210 mark the entire season. Now his average has risen to 223. We've seen him spray the ball a little bit more and be that Pete Alonso that we know, that more judge-like that Todd Zeal mentioned as well during episode 18, that we've been waiting for this season from Pete Alonso. And as you said, he missed a chunk of time and he still leads the league. I mean, he still leads the club in all major offensive categories. Like where on earth would we be without him? And that's the question. You want to talk about a core of a team, you build around Alvarez, Lindor, and Alonso. Wasn't just Sal Licata making up some BS this week. To be honest, I think there's a lot more validity to this than Licata's nonsense. But Rob, you have a nice little quote there from Mr. Mike Puma of New York Post, who gave some insight into potential clash between Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer during their time in Queens.
No, definitely. And again, from Pete Alonso and those rumors to now the starting pitching staff or the former starting pitching staff of the New York Mets, headlined by two superstars, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. An anonymous Met called Justin Verlander a diva. According to the New York Post, like Ian said, Mike Puma, Verlander, and Scherzer had a strained relationship as Tigers teammates, and a source even said that the pitchers worked toward harmony with the Mets. There was occasional discord. Verlander was a diva, quote unquote, according to this Met, causing Scherzer to grouse about his fellow three-time Cy Young Award winner. Verlander often complained about the Mets analytics department, which he deemed inferior to the one that served him in Houston. Again, Baz, like I said, from one disgruntled Met rumor to, another. What do you think about these two?
I think there's a validity to a potential disconnect between Scherzer and Verlander, even at this stage in their careers. I know that they weren't the best of friends in Detroit. They were younger. You would think that they would mature. I know that they also did work out together in the offseason, and they do live near each other down in Jupiter. So that is something that I would have thought maybe would have mended fences. I'm just wondering, I have a I don't like, I could see how JV could be a diva, but I don't necessarily think that. Basically what I'm trying to say is I want to know who the fuck the anonymous Met is. Who do you think it is?
No, again, I mean, I've seen this before. An anonymous this or anonymous that has said this. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Definitely someone in the pitching staff. if you're really trying to break it down, obviously Senga, his first year in the MLB, is not going to say shit like that. You look at the young guys, Peterson and McGill, they're bouncing up and down in AAA, so I can't really say that it was them two. And same with Quintana. He started the year in July, August, so I can't really see Quintana saying something. So all signs lead to kind of Max Scherzer in a way. He continued to kind of talk about his conversations with the Mets brass as he got traded to the Texas Rangers. So like I said, all signs kind of lead to Mad Max over here.
See, that's what I think it is. I think that the disconnect led to because Scherzer's a metal to the pedal type of guy. He wants to go full force. Analytics were a newer thing to him, where Verlander really relied on it in his renaissance in the later 2010s when he really came back into his own towards the end of his tenure in Detroit and then into Houston. But I find it interesting that at first, as I said earlier, my initial reaction was, Justin Verlander being a diva in his first year in Queens with the richest owner in baseball, how can he be saying this, that, and the third about the pitching, about the analytic department, right? And then Rob, right before the show, pulls up that Justin Verlander just 45 minutes ago tweeted out a prepared statement which read, I want to say that I have nothing but respect for the Mets organization, and I enjoyed connecting with all of my teammates this season, new and old. Scherzer. It was truly a wonderful group of people. That being said, we all know the success of a team is made up of more than just the players on the field. Everybody's input is valuable. I'm sorry to hear that a staff member took offense to constructive criticism on how we could improve. Wishing nothing but the best to the Mets organization moving forward. Thoughts?
Okay. So it seems like Justin Verlander and this quote unquote staff member obviously didn't agree on maybe in terms of what he should be pitching analytically, or, again, just like in the bullpen. I don't know. It could, again, when I think of staff member, I think of Jeremy Hefner. And again, I love Hef. He's done a decent job in terms of the last 2 years with the pitching staff. And again, former player, um, especially with the Mets, we've seen how he was as a Met. He loved it. But again, I'm not sure. And this just all points down back to the analytic department, and if the Mets can really, I guess, keep going for keep using it, keep going forward with it. Because again, Cohen has mentioned the pitching lab a lot. Obviously Verlander didn't like what he saw, or didn't like how
does he need it? Does he need to enhance it?
I mean, again, I think more so maybe just one quote unquote diva just didn't like what the analytic department had to say, whether it's about mechanics or pitch types or pitch grip or this and that. But Justin Verlander's been in the league for a long time, and it's just hard to believe that, again, like that one little incident just causes all of 2023 to kind of implode.
Yeah, I didn't even think about Jeremy Hefner, to be honest with you. Because he is somebody that, genuinely speaking, was an analytic guru in Minnesota before he came over. He brought some of that stuff, and then obviously Cohen enhanced it. That really is interesting. And I think rereading that quote out loud just now, him saying new and old, I wonder if that old with 3 exclamation points after it, I wonder if that is him trying to signal and give a little tip, to the fans and to Major League Baseball, saying, no, Scherzer and I were not the problem. This wasn't it. So, and then mentioning a staff member, it's funny because a staff member in any other industry, what a staff member is. It's a current peer. It's a staff member. But on a staff member in baseball, I don't know if a staff member refers to a coach. I don't know if a staff member refers to one of his peers, which are teammates. I don't know if a staff member is a clubby. You know what I mean? Like, I have no idea, but I don't know. I think you're onto something. I think that I definitely think you're onto something. It's just really unfortunate that 10 years plus, 10 years later, they couldn't even, put some qualms to bed in terms of them. And then obviously if there was a disdain between Hefner or somebody else in the analytic department with Verlander, obviously it's just a shame, but
no, definitely a shame. And again, when we signed Justin Verlander, the first thing a lot of beat writers said was, oh, we're reuniting him with Max Scherzer. just like the days in Detroit, this, that, and the third. So this coming out is, again, this is the first time I've heard that they've had a strained relationship. They were together in Detroit for a really long time, if you really think about it. But again, it's just another, it's more shit to pile on the shitstorm, unfortunately. And again, 2023 has been a whirlwind of a year, to be honest with you.
I think that the reports now coming out, including how badly the Mets are playing right now, all this shit just epitomizes, as you said, the 2023 New York Mets. When we're talking about extensions for Pete Alonso, I know I brought up on the last episode a figure that I like. To be honest, I don't even remember what I said. With that being said, three comparable contracts that I'm looking to when it comes to Pete Alonso: Paul Goldschmidt, Matt Olson, and Freddie Freeman. Those are the three contracts, the three players currently that I think match up with Alonso's production, Alonso's position, obviously, and where he is in his career. It's go time. I know that in the past I have said that the Mets could and should dangle Alonso and see what they can get back, and I know that I've put that to rest. But it's go time. It's time for them to focus in, hone in on an extension, and get this done. Any contract in particular that you see most comparable to Alonso in just in terms of value as well as age and production?
No, again, I mean, you bring up, well, when you think of extension for first basemen, you think of Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, what they got, and even Paul Goldschmidt. And again, Alonso's making 14.5 million right now. I think going into the offseason, or even just going into the end of the season, maybe you offer Alonso around like 27, 28 million a year for 6 to 8 years, maybe an opt out in between. But again, if you want to get this done, then I think an 8 year, $224 million deal gets it done. That's 28 million average annual value. And that makes him the highest paid first baseman, I believe.
So you're saying that you believe that Pete Alonso wants to be the highest paid first baseman, and that will probably get a deal done.
No, definitely. I mean, again, I don't, and I'm sure, he would want the money, obviously, but I think all in all, the numbers just don't lie. 35 home runs in 4 seasons and consistently just driving in runs. Again, eventually, I think he'll be a designated hitter down the line if the DH is still in the National League. But again, I just think the Mets need to get this done. I think it would boost up a little bit of morale in terms of New York Met fans and the clubhouse in general, and building around a guy like Alonso and that core, quote unquote, Sal Licata talks about. But again, Alonso's earned it in my eyes. He's loved being a Met. He's been a multiple time All Star. He's home run derby champ, and again, this guy drives and runs. It's all about driving and runs and scoring in this league, and Pete Alonso has showed that.
And he also can get on base, and now he's showing it that he is, now that he's playing a little bit better, the stats are starting to come into play. His on base percentage is rising a little bit. To me, that's my most important thing. And on top of it, as you said, he's a run producer. I like that 28 for 8, giving you $224 million over that 8-year span. He will be entering his age 29 season next year, right? As you said, $14.5 million this year. I believe that's his second to last arbitration. So arbitration this offseason will he'll probably go to 19, 20. And the other thing as well is that, Lord, if it gets to an arbitration hearing and the Mets bring up some shit and Paula Corbin Burns, then who knows? Maybe Alonso may not want to stick around long term. I like that. Another deal that I like is, again, we're going to make him the highest paid first baseman in the league. 29 mil over 6 years. Okay. With an opt out after 3. So he can opt out after his age 32 season, give him 6 years. So that gives him $174 million. And again, it does make him the highest paid first baseman. You just can't let this shit get beyond. You just can't let this get to next season. That's my bottom line here.
No, I see where you're coming from. And again, I think if it gets to next season, or even, if they go into an arbitration hearing, it's going to be bad news for the Mets. Because again, Pete Alonso is, as much as he is a loyal guy to this franchise, we're going to see it next offseason and even next year. But he does know his worth. And again, like you said, we don't want to pull a Corbin Burns type situation, and then we go in disgruntled, and then the Mets start off bad, and then he's requesting a trade or something like that. I'm not saying he's that type of person, but again, Pete Alonso, like I've said all year long, numbers don't lie, and he's just consistent in terms of the home run numbers and driving in runs. So that's the bread and butter nowadays in the MLB. And again, I think he is deserving of being the highest first baseman, paid first baseman. But again, we want the Mets to be successful in the long run, and yeah,
The
definitely,
highest first baseman.
definitely, 100%. 100%. But again, Pete Alonso has shown that he could, be consistent, and whether he's in for average or not. But again, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I just don't want to let it. I think why it's so important is I just don't want to let it get to beyond. I don't want him to hit free agency whatsoever, because there are going to be opportunities out there, and whether he continues to hit 35 plus home runs a year beyond age 35, that there are still going to be teams that are going to be throwing a loot at him, right? And he wants to be a Met. So get it done. Don't let it get to a scenario where you're bidding with the Giants like the Yankees were with Aaron Judge. Finalize it sooner. He wants to be a Met. Just get it done, Uncle Steve. Get it done. You had mentioned morale previously and boosting that in what's been a lost season. I agree. An Alonso extension would boost the morale. Um, Once they get the Alonso deal done, I think it's time to lock up Francisco Alvarez long term. Am I being premature with that or what?
Uh, what kind of deal are you looking for in terms of like an extension from Francisco Alvarez? Because again, he's only 21 years old, his first kind of full season in the big leagues. Are you trying to be like an Atlanta Braves type deal and lock
Yeah.
him up for like a 10-year deal, 100 mil or something like that? Or
Yeah. I mean, maybe not 10 years considering he's a catcher, but look at, I want the Mets to, everyone says the Mets want to be the West Coast Dodgers. They just did that, right? By trading off their pieces, paying for a farm system, essentially. Yeah, we can be the East Coast Dodgers. Let's also be the fucking Northeast Braves. Okay. Let's start signing our key pieces early. Ronald Acuna Jr., okay, signed an 8-year, $100 million contract in 2019 at age 21, bought out all of his arbitration years, okay? Essentially, the luxury tax salary that attached to the luxury tax for them was $12.5 million per year. Payroll salary and the adjusted salary, which reflects on the team's salary, he literally took a raise from $1 million, took a pay cut in 2020 due to the COVID shortened season, right? He was set to make $1 million as well, went to 5 mil, $15 million last year, and now he will make $17 million through his age 28 season. And then the Braves hold 2 club options on him for 2027 and 2028, which only brings him till his age 30 season.
so I see you lock him down a little bit, and again, I think he is the catcher of the future. But what type, again, like in numbers wise, years wise, like what would be like a ideal Francisco Alvarez extension for you?
I like that deal. I like 8 years, $100 million. I know that that's a lot but it's an investment, and you're investing in a player that hits the crap out of the ball. Okay. That not many catchers do. Okay. He's also, you saw it in the game the other night when he ran out to the pitcher's mound to save the Mets from a pitch clock violation, which would have put them in a much worse position than they already were in. He's ahead of his time. He knows what he's doing. The thing that I would like to see is I'd like to see him get his on base percentage up a little bit. I'd like to see him draw a few more walks. He is more antsy, but yeah, 8 years. So $12.5 million over 8 years gives you $100 million. You can even do like the Mets can even do 10 mil at for 8 years. You know what I mean? Like Francisco Alvarez right now is not Ronald Acuna Jr. when he was a prospect. No, nothing against Francisco Alvarez. What he's doing is historic, but give him $80 million over 8 years.
No, and again, and the catching position is something the Mets have lacked for a really long time. So I think again, when you compare him to a guy like Acuna, two totally different positions, obviously. But again, he's that type of force. He's that type of again, he would help the Mets in the long run a lot. I think 8 years is perfect because by the time that contract's over, he'll be 29, 30 heading into free agency. And again, who knows how good he'll be and what his market will be like down the line. But again, we're worried about now. We're worried about the next 3 to 5 years, and we want to be competitive. And I think Alvarez, well, again, I think an extension for Alvarez would definitely benefit us in the long run. And again, it will be a start to something special in terms of a long-term plan.
Yeah, I just going back to that core of Sal Licata, make it a known from this offseason on. The Mets core, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Francisco Alvarez, and Kodai Senga. Those are 4 knowns that we have beyond 2024. And the Mets only have a little bit more than $120 million projected to the payroll thus far beyond 2024. So an extension for Alonso can be worked out, and the Mets will still have a ton of money coming off the books. It's time to Paul and Alex Anthopoulos re-sign or sign Francisco Alvarez to an extension, as well as Pete Alonso. Let's keep our homegrown kids in Queens intact over the long term, and let's get it done. Let's start. We talk about a winning culture. We talk about, setting precedents for years to come. And you want to be successful over the long term. It starts with a core. It starts with a nucleus, starts with a young nucleus. And I think Francisco Alvarez has given the Mets everything, that he's shown that he's worth, and he's only getting better at this point. So.
All right, so the Mets are still playing, unfortunately, and with the likes of Danny Mendick and Jonathan Rose up the middle for a couple games now, I think it's Boz. I think it's safe to say that Ronnie Mauricio deserves a call up. No.
Yeah, I'd be pissed off too if I was Ronnie Mauricio down or up in AAA. I mean, the latest with him. I guess in 6 days, we'll find out if I've been lying to everybody for the last month or so. This August 20th deadline thing for an extra year of team control, it used to be towards the end of April. And through the new CBA, I've read that it's changed to a date in August. Again, I don't know if that's true or not. So I may really come off looking like a fool here if the Mets don't call him up after the 20th. With that said, yes, I'm tired of seeing Danny Mendick and Jonathan Rose too. Mendick, I like to see him get at bats here and there because he is under team control. And he is somebody who has hit at the big league level at times. Ronnie Mauricio right now, 103 games in Syracuse, 19 home runs, 63 ribbies, 289 average, 339 on base percentage, OPS up to 831. And he also is playing not only second, not only a little bit of outfield, but he's also playing some third base. Thoughts on that, Rob?
Yeah, again, it's nice to hear. I've been told that he can play multiple positions. I've also heard that Brett Beatty is going to get moved from third base. I don't know where, but I think it's good in terms of on a personal level for Ronnie Mauricio. It makes him more not expendable, but it makes him more versatile. If we end up keeping him in the big league lineup or in the big league club moving forward. I also think it gives Brett Beatty a chance to kind of, solidify himself at a different position, whether it's in left field or first base or as a DH. But again, in terms of like the trading market, I think it also gives the Mets the upper hand in terms of they can dangle a Brett Beatty or they can dangle a Ronnie Mauricio if they decide to trade one of those two.
Now, that's what I was thinking, right? But do you think Beatty's performance this year may have hurt his trade value?
I think more so defensively. I think he still has a great offensive approach. I know the Mets wanted him to hit the ball in the air more, but you've seen it in AAA. Once he got called down, he hit a home run. Then the next day, he hit another home run. So the potential is there in terms offensively. But I think at third base. He definitely hurt himself. I definitely think, I'm gonna be honest with you, Boz. I definitely think trading away Escobar definitely hurt him a little bit. That's a guy who could have mentored him and helped him through his struggles on the field, whether it was behind closed doors or whether it was during games. But again, yeah, I definitely do think defensively, Brett Beatty needs a lot of work. It definitely killed his value in terms of playing third base at the big league level every day. But again, I think he'll get it. But offensively, he's there. He's got the potential. He's a hitter, man. He's from Texas. They know how to hit. They play baseball all year round. And again, he's still only 23. So again, I still have hope for Brett Beatty.
Yeah, as do I. And, it's funny that you say first base. That's something that I was even pondering last week as, just going over some of those Pete Alonso thoughts. Could the Mets see a fit there? I also just think that, again, we're no trade Pete Alonso club. Like, we're not trading him. He's a Met for life. But, allowing more versatility for some of these players is only a good thing. And if Ronnie Mauricio, who is predominantly an infielder, can play a third base, that would really help the Mets out, especially with, Luis Angel Acuna playing second base and then Jet Williams also having experience there. It gives more leeway for some of the younger kids. But Ronnie Mauricio needs to be called up, and I think that we'll find out sooner rather than later. And if he doesn't get called up, I truly do believe it's because they're shielding him and they don't want to expose any type of flaw that they may think he has so that they can deal him in the offseason. So the Braves absolutely destroyed the Mets despite taking the Mets winning last night. Senga pitched well. McNeil starting to hit. I mean, I think the Mets need to start managing Senga's innings a little bit, make sure that he's a healthy cog going into next season. Not too much, though, because you want him to get experience pitching throughout the course of a full season. Again, McNeil's coming around, just about time here on August 14th. Really helpful. Pete Alonso looked good, this, that, and the third. But the Braves put a wallop. They took 3 of 4 at Citi Field, and most notably, it looked like a football game occurred at Citi Field on Saturday, game 1. The Braves won 21-3. How embarrassing.
Definitely embarrassing. And, again, the Jets did play around that time. So you would think it was a football game at Citi Field, but it wasn't. Again, they probably should have lost, 13-3 or 11-3, but then they put in Danny Mendick and he gave up 8 runs. The Braves, I mean, they're my team to beat for the playoffs as my World Series champion. I hate to say it, but, that lineup 1 through 9 is just dangerous. Pitching staff, granted, this Mets lineup wasn't the same as it was in April, but again, just didn't hit. Braves doing what they do, beating up on division opponents, but 21-3. Last time I think the Mets gave up 20 runs was in like Washington or something like that, but still very, very, very high scoring game.
Yeah. Really high scoring game, and obviously we're on the other end of it, so it really sucked. Do you think that the Tankathon should be a full go right now?
The Tankathon, that's a good one, but yeah, no, definitely. I think it's already in a full go, and again, you explained before the show that why last place finish wouldn't be such a bad thing for the Metropolitans.
Yeah, so I don't want to finish with a worse record than the Washington Nationals. Okay. With all that being said, as currently situated, the Mets winning last night screwed up them being within the top 6. And basically, for those who don't know, since the Mets are exceeding the tax threshold within their payroll for a second consecutive season, if they wind up with, let's say, the 10th overall pick in this year's draft, their pick will be moved to 20th. It gets moved back 10 slots. Okay. If they finish within the top 6 worst records, then their pick is protected. So, with that being said, with all the players that the Mets just drafted, all the talent they acquired at the trade deadline, it would be conceivable to go ahead and try to tank. And to be honest, I can't say that. I can. Screw it. I'm only really interested in and rooting for the Mets to win when Kodai Senga is on the mound. Jose Quintana too, because I know that he'll be a part of the rotation for next year. But I going from we're winning the World Series to here on August 14th, I want them to lose. I'm being fucking serious.
So you trust in the process here. All right. I mean, again, I've never heard you say that as a competitor. I've known you for a long time, and I think I'm on the same boat in terms of I only watch the games when Senga's on the bump. Again, Quintana, like you said, he hasn't gotten a win yet, but doesn't really matter because he has pitched well over the course of his last 4 or 5 starts. But again, it's good to see them two kind of like still progress and still kind of be competitive, just so you have something to look forward to in 2024. But again, with the crop that we got from the trade deadline in terms of prospects, how we bought our farm system to potentially having the top 6 pick be protected, not so much of a turnaround, but it's a good start in terms of the turnaround long term success for the New York Mets.
Exactly. And then it'll also make everybody envious because if you think about it, the Mets just went out, as you said, they bought a farm system, right? They spent all that money, bought a farm system after winning 101 games last year. They're going to go ahead and this offseason, I can definitely see them adding quite a few very good pieces, but none that qualifying offers are attached to. Because if you sign somebody with a qualifying offer, you lose that draft pick in the first round as well, right? As situated right now, there is a little draft simulator here online that's available to the public. The Oakland Athletics currently, as well as the Kansas City Royals and the Colorado Rockies, all have the best odds at 16.5% to get the first overall selection. Those are the teams with the 3 worst records: Athletics, Royals, Rockies. After that, the last 3 that would be protected would be the Chicago White Sox, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the Washington Nationals. With that said, the Nationals are currently 53-66, and the Mets are 53-65, and the Mets are then tied with the Pirates and the Tigers in that 7th slot. So the tank is on, man, and I'm rooting for it because if you're going to go ahead, have a great farm system like the Mets currently have put together, then they get a top 6 draft pick. Imagine if they end up with the first overall pick. Like, imagine if within the lottery they end up within the top 6 worst records, and then their odds somehow are in the Mets' favor, and they get the first overall pick. The league would be furious that Steve Cohen gets the pick first. It 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 just it's something that yeah, you're right. I've never rooted for this before, but knowing that the Mets have the money that they do, the talent that they do have on the roster, you know that you're going to get a bounce back from either one of McNeil or Marte next year. You know Lindor and Alonso are going to do their thing. You know that they're going to add pieces, even though they may not be the upper echelon guys. The Mets can win next year and still have a top 5 draft pick, and that's something that I think they should look towards.
No, definitely. And again, if we do end up with the number 1 pick, that has to be some type of history or something. You end up the year before with 101 wins, you make the playoffs, and then the next year you're making the first selection in the 2023 MLB draft. And imagine you could actually trade draft picks, like then the Mets trade the number 1 overall pick for more picks, but it's not like the NBA or in the NFL. But again, that would be some turn of events, as people say. But going from 101 wins to the next year picking number 1 overall, yeah, people would be pissed that Uncle Stevie kind of not accomplished it, but has the number 1 overall pick, and then could potentially just turn the franchise around within 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, and then you see over the weekend too, like that there's obviously the Mets are going to be in high pursuit of Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the right-handed pitcher from Japan. But
Nice.
I don't know if you saw, but there are rumblings around the league that say that people are saying essentially that you are dumb if you don't think that the Mets are going to be in talks with Shohei Ohtani this winter. So you just never know with Steve Cohen. But again, I think getting that top draft pick would be absolutely incredible for the club. And quite frankly, unfortunately, I'm rooting for it, but I'm also then rooting for the Nationals to be even worse. So then we don't finish in last place, but we have a protected pick. And holy hell, man, if we end up with that number 1, whew, forget it. as we wrap up episode 20 here of season 2, which is our 40th episode of all time, which means that I guess we had 20 last season as well. I didn't really realize. But as we wrap up episode 20 here of season 2, Rob, any final thoughts here?
No, again, episode 20 of season 2, 40 episodes overall. So far, so good with the Cup of Mets family. Ian and I appreciate all the support and love that we've been getting as the last 2 years. Listen, Mets fans, it's a roller coaster of emotions being a Mets fan. If you're not enjoying it, then go root for another team. But this is just how we are. And again, be on the lookout for our Cup of Mets shirts. I'm wearing one right now. Shout out to Ian. He made 2 as like a prototype, but they're definitely going to hit the market very, very, very soon. Big things coming for Cup of Mets. Just enjoy the ride. And, again, let's try to finish the season very positive, and we'll see where we are in the offseason of 2023.
Yeah, as Rob said, he's donning the beautiful shirt there if you're watching on YouTube. So get ready for a launch there. We're going to have some merchandise that's going to be available to all of our listeners and all of our fans. Just a quick reminder to give us a follow on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on TikTok, which we have started utilizing. We are at Cup of Mets. In addition, a reminder to rate and subscribe to our podcasts here on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. For Robert Venegas, I'm Ian Bosniak. Hang in there, guys. Good night, everybody.